Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel, and today I want to present you a very special opening for you. It's called Berry Attack. First, I'd like to mention the name of one of my best chess friends and the guy to whom I actually dedicate this lesson. It's Carl Pottinger from Canada, aka Don Carlito. He knows why do I dedicate this video to him. Hopefully you all are going to enjoy it, and many of you in the past asked me to make something about d4, but at the same time not to be one of those main lines. Well, it's time to present you an opening that can be played by e4 players, but at the same time to be one of those d4 openings that you can easily learn and to cope with when you play the first move d4. Berry Attack has been successfully used by all these top GMs, including Magnus Carlsen, Firuzia, Nakamura, and all other top guys. One of the major, I would say, representative of that opening is Grandmaster Mark Hebden from England. I also have to, before I start showing you analysis and lines, to mention a great book about examples from this Berry Attack made by Summerscale, Grandmaster from England, who made a beautiful book about ferocious attack and ferocious openings or something like that in these variations. I believe the name is like a killer chess opening repertoire for white, and definitely it's time to show you. Here you on the board can see the movement and the placement of the white pieces. It's not going to be that boring, don't worry. It can be combined with Jobava attack. Also, it can be combined with all those 150 attack positions against the Peer's opening. So fasten your seat belts, sit tight, and enjoy the lecture. Let's go. First, I have to tell you how do we reach these positions. So it happens from d4, and when they go with knight f6, I like to play knight f3. I like to play knight f3 because I like to play Kola system with white, a pure Kola system. Then I also like to play Kola Tsukirtat for white. But at the same time, when they go with g6, I'm not going with c4 and those main lines, and that's not going to be the subject of today's lecture. But we're going to be going with knight c3. Now you'll ask me, well, is that the only way to reach the Berry Attack? No. You also can play Veresov opening. So after d4, knight f6, you can play the knight c3. What I don't like about this one is when they play d5, and when I play bishop f4, they can play a wide range of other possibilities rather than g6. And if that happens, then we don't have the Berry Attack. So how should we play? We should be going with d4, knight f6, knight f3, second move. And now, if they go e6, I'll teach you in some of the future lessons how to play a Kola system or something else. But what's going to happen if they go with g6? One more thing, get ready. I've been waiting for quite a long. I'm going to teach you how to play London with white pieces, one of the next lessons. It is going to be a very extensive coverage of the London system, not only in one lesson, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be one of your most favorite video on the channel ever. So after like knight f3, what happens when they go g6? I remember I was a pretty young player. There was a guy from my city who after g6 played knight c3 against me. At that time, I only knew for these main lines, and I was hoping that the guy would play c4. When he played knight c3 against me, and I was pretty young without so much theory and articles to find out about the openings, I was very confused. I said, what does he want? So I said to myself, if I play d6, he's going to be going with e4. And that's nothing else, but I'm playing Peer's opening. Am I a Peer's player? I'm not. And by the way, in one of the next videos and lectures, I'm going to teach you how to play against Peer's 150 attack. So we're going to connect it with Berry Attack, and you're going to like it so much. Another thing is that after e4, You have a possibility to play positional. You can play like h3, bishop e3, Jinjikashvili system. And I'm going to show you the 150 attack. That's going to be the top-notch thing, and you're going to enjoy those positions very much. It's very simple for playing against Beards players. Anyways, after like knight c3, I played d5 because somebody told me when I played the King's Indian, if somebody plays knight c3 and he's about to play e4, I'm not supposed to play d6 in order not to give them pairs. So we should always be going with d5, not allowing them to play e4. That's what I did. My opponent played bishop f4 and he absolutely destroyed me. Right after the game, I wanted to check what was wrong about my strategy, what was wrong about my game, and I realized I had to play against the berry attack. So, time to show you all the secrets of this very aggressive opening, and I'm pretty much sure you're going to enjoy it very much. Let's go. After like bishop f4, they go bishop g7, and you play e3. Of course that you can play like Shigorin defense with queen d2, some other openings and stuff, but here we're just talking about the most attacking setup with e3, bishop e2, and no, I didn't play bishop e2 to simply develop myself and to go with short castle and play something boring. Just like you see by these arrows, I'd like to place my knight on e5 to support the h4, h5 pushing on the king side with the bishop on e2. So basically, I'm absolutely ready, and all systems are just ready here to go with kingside attack. So after bishop e2, black has following possibilities. Here, I'm going to present, believe it or not, 6 different possibilities apart from the only move for black. And now we already came to a very interesting moment, I would say tabia position for this opening. And here, believe it or not, there is only one good move for black. Everything else leads to tremendous problems and definitely very promising positions and games for white. I'm going to show you a couple of interesting games. I just found lots of interesting, very attractive games for white players. Once again, remember, no, we don't want to play short castle. We would like to jump with the knight on e5, and yes, we'd like to go and to launch the kingside attack and simply unleash h4 and h5 on the king side. There is a very important thing here that only c5 should be played, and that's the only challenging line against berry attack. Also, I'd like to connect it with another thing. c5 is just one move, and there are 6 more common moves in practice. c5 is known online by 35% of the guys. You just have to know that many of these guys just play c5 even after that going wrong after c5. So I checked like what's the percentage of the players who really play well the c5 possibilities, and I found out that it's 21% of the players in those c5. So basically, not too many guys will know how to treat and how to play against the berry attack. Time to show you all these tricks, and let's get started. After you play bishop e2, let's begin with one of the most challenging things. It's knight h5. This knight is going after our bishop, and our bishop needs to find shelter, needs to find, like its salvation here. If we lose the dark square bishop, probably they equalize, maybe even got a slightly better position without any problems. So we go with bishop g5. We're keeping the dark square bishop. We don't want to give them to win this bishop anyhow. They go h6, and they said, buddy, I'll play g5. I'm about to win your bishop. At what cost? And now you'll say, okay, here I can play bishop g3. He's going to take it. And in that case, at least I'm going to lose the dark square bishop. But at least I'm going to have an open h file, and he's gonna have these broken pawns around the king and kind of exposed king on g8. And that already would be pretty much good compensation for the loss of the dark square bishop. But here, I have a specialty for you, a specialty that hasn't been used in maybe only in one game so far it was used. It's g4. No one ever played this move so far, and it's the refutation. It's a really remarkable move by white. And nobody expects this because simply g4 is under the attack and control of the light square bishop on c8. And now you're wondering, well, what's happening when they play like this? Well, let me just show you. After they go like this, boom, you sack a piece. And that's very interesting. When I prepared a couple of my students to play the Barry attack in the past, I showed them this trick, and they already won, like, I can't say a few of these games, but dozens of games after knight g5. So you now threaten to win the bishop. If they take, of course, you just take the bishop. They go like this, and you just have, you're just about to be up a pawn. The pawn on h4 is about to drop. You'll play rook g1, queen g4. King is without proper defense, and this is dead lost. After bishop e2, queen e2, h takes g5, queen h5, we're down a piece. But what do we have in return? We got a queen on h5. We have a possible attack with rook g1 and long castle afterwards. So after rook g1, most of these guys, when you play online and when they enter this position, they go queen d6 to mobilize their pieces to prevent queen h6, also queen g5, and to say, I'm, you know, like kind of getting like my pieces to be harmonized, and I just want to play knight d7, knight f6 is possible. After a long castle, why is that so important? Because you got to join with another piece, and that's the rook. After a long castle, at the same time, king is absolutely safe on c1, so you just join into the action. Here you can win in so many ways, doubling your rooks on the g file, but knight takes d5 is just enough, and for example, rook g7, rook g1, and if they move the king, queen h8, checkmate. If they play queen g6, rook g6, and you should easily be winning in a game like this. They just completely fall apart, king is weak, and this is an easy position. Don't forget about this idea after knight h5, g4. It's a really beautiful one, and it works more than good in practice. Knight bd7. I would just say that it's a terrible move here. No, you don't have knight b5. Don't worry about that, because worst case scenario for them, they can play knight e8 and to defend it. And not worst case scenario, actually. Everyone is probably going to go for that. But I'm just saying, in case you think you're going to win something, no, you won't. And when you play like, when they go with knight bd7, you should be going with h4. Very primitive way of playing this opening. These variations and positions. Play h4, jump with the knight on e5, support the h5 push, and go with attack along the h file. So I believe analyzing anything else but h5 by black would be pointless here, because all you want to do is knight e5 followed by h5. If you do it, I would say 75% of the game is just done. So after like h4, h5. h5 makes perfect sense because it's not allowing us to go with knight e5 and h5, but it gives us something else. h5 pawn presents a hook for our kingside attack afterwards with g4. So we just jump with the knight on e5, and we have two kinds of possibilities. To push g4, but here it's impossible because of knight takes e5 followed by knight or bishop g4, or first to go with f3, queen d2, long castle, and break with g4. That's a very typical plan, very, I would say, common in Barry attack, and it works perfectly fine for white. So after like knight e5, they just go c6, you go queen d2, they capture, and you don't capture by pawn. Please don't make this mistake, because if you do that, they will go back with the knight here, or knight g4, and you will have problem with the pawn on e5. In order not to face like problems with a weak pawn on e5, we should take by bishop. Taking by bishop is a big thing because right now I want to set myself ready for long castle, f3, and break on the king side with g4. No, your name doesn't have to be Magnus Carlsen to be able to play these positions successfully. You just have to know the main ideas of the very attack, and that's why I'm telling you, I'm teaching you one of the offbeat variations in the d4 opening, one of the lines where you don't have to know so much theory, but you rely pretty much on easy, simple attacking plans on the king side. And that's pretty a big thing, you have to admit. So after like bishop e5, they go with b5. I don't know, they just want to do the counter attack on the queen side, and it's a normal thing in King's Indian, in Pearts, in all these type of positions when they go with b5. So what are they trying to do? They're also, while we're preparing ourselves for the king side attack, they're just preparing themselves for the queen side action. And after like b5, I like f3. I like to support the g4 ideas. And a5. It's a very, I would say, normal way of trading this opening. They would like to push that pawn to a4 and then to go to b4, because b4, we can just jump with the knight on a4 and they will never be able to carry on with the attack on the queen side. So after like long castles, a4, watch out. Now they really threaten to play b4 and b3 and to mess the things up. And somehow there are lots of experienced guys who will play like this with the black pieces, and you just have to be very cautious. So what do you have to do here? Play a3 to prevent b4. They can play c5 either. And when they play queen a5, the last attempt to do something like this, my vote goes to knight a2 and play like this. You know what? Since we have a possibility to reroute our knight via b4 to d3 and to control everything, b4, c5, e5, f4, since we got a possibility to play like, I was talking about this idea, controlling this, and this, since we have a possibility to go with some sort of like, I would call it artificial attack in this queenless middle game, I don't see any special problems for for white players. Objectively speaking, position is around equalish, maybe slightly better for white, but I just showed you one of the very lovely and good ways of playing with the black pieces. So what do? You just go h4, you just go knight e5 and support the idea with h5. Third plan is a6. There are lots of guys who are simply afraid of knight b5 and they just go with a6, and who want to go with b5 themselves, getting some sort of the action on the queen side. It doesn't change our plans. So that's why I like the very attack. You always go with the same type of attack. h4 with the idea of what? With the idea of knight e5 and h5. So here it's very important to emphasize the importance of the following thing. In the Berry attack, there are so many players who automatically, just like on autopilot, they just go with bishop g4. I believe h5 is the best move. But if they go with bishop g4, it's terrible move. It's terrible move. It's like telling you, okay, guy, okay, you're gonna mate me if you can, and basically we won't miss a chance. Bishop g4 is terribly placed bishop because it just speeds up, accelerates our attack on the king side. We play knight e5, attacking the bishop, forcing on exchanges, and now we have a very easy long castle followed by h5. Imagine you play something. I'll just play h5. You take my knight. I sack the rook on h5, and I'm gonna mate you. I have all my pieces ready for the mating attack. I'll play long castle. I'll play h5. I'll sack this rook. I'll join with the rook from d1 to h1 when I make long castle, and you won't be able to defend yourself because the only piece that you have in this position to defend yourself is nothing else but bishop on g7, and it's not enough. So if they go h5, just like I told you previously, h5 pawn is going to be a hook for your attack. So our next idea will be g4, breaking on the king side. That's why most of these guys go with h5, but that doesn't change anything. We play knight e5. Here, this is certainly way better for black because they haven't swapped the light square bishops off. So when they play knight bd7, you gotta show patience. Please don't rush and play g4 because you might regret this. They will just take on e5, and whether you take by pawn or bishop, they will just take the pawn for nothing. So watch out, show patience, and don't show any signs of, like going furiously into the attack and not preparing it with something else. But for example, queen d2. Queen d2 is so nice because queen d2, it just completes development, gives you long castle, and it's gonna give you the attack on the king side. So when they play c6, we play long castle. They take on e5, we take by bishop. By taking with the bishop on e5, once again, and I'm going to repeat it again for you, we're not supposed to capture by pawn because they bring the knight back to d7 or g4. I believe it on g4 is even better because it doesn't allow you even g4 anyhow. And now e5 turns out to be weak, knight on f2, pawn on f2 is weak, and you just fall apart. It's very important to remember these ideas because sometimes it's not only to remember your own plans, but also to know the plans of your opponents and to know the basic tricks that you can fall for. And that's also very, very important in your preps. So if they're like bishop e5, they go bishop h6. For example, I analyzed this bishop h6 and I played one game like this. I was black. I somehow managed to win, but let's be honest, my position was terrible. My opponent just played f3, and somehow afterwards I tricked him with a black pieces, but objectively speaking, this is absolutely promising game for white with lots of easygoing ways to attack on the king side. You just want to put your king in safety if needed on b1, but I don't even think you need it. If they ever retreat the knight on d7, you'll go back to f4, reaching tempo, and you just want to break on the king side with g4 by playing rook dg1, and that's all what we're looking for there. We've seen 3 moves so far. Time to check bishop g4. Here I'd like to show you the game between Magnus Carlsen and Salem. I already explained you that the bishop g4 is one of the weakest reactions by white players. Bishop g4 makes no sense because you anyways intend to play knight e5, and here you do it immediately, and by exchanging the light square bishops, who's gonna stop h4 followed by h5? Salem played c6, Magnus played h4, and Magnus didn't want to waste his time. He immediately went with g4. After knight bd7, Salem wants to take on e5 and to take on g4. Magnus supported the g4 pawn, played long castle, played rook dg1, and I wanted to say you don't have to be a Magnus Carlsen to play like this, and Magnus Carlsen played this game himself. Just like you see, rook dg1, white just has an amazing position. It's very difficult for black to defend here, and Salem got killed after h takes, f takes. Try to simplify the game somehow. Magnus captured, and typical Magnus, he's not going for h5 that most of us would go for. He plays g5. So he's playing positionally. When Salem played rook h8, he now broke in the center, playing e4, threatening he takes d5 followed by knight d5 because there is a x-ray against the queen on e7. King on g7 is kind of weak. f-file could be taken, and Magnus won this game back to 2017. Let's make conclusion. No bishop g4 should be good for them. b6. Lots of guys could be familiar that the bishop g4 is not a good idea, could realize during the game that the bishop g4 simply doesn't seem to work, or simply after knight e5 accelerate our attacking chances on the king side, or they just like to do the double fianchetto with bishop g7 and bishop b7. So they will go with b6. Does it change anything? Nothing. Let me just show you what's happening there. So you play h4. Is it a big deal? Not at all. What's the point of this one? You just want to go with kingside attack. Here, I prepared two games for you. One game that, for my taste, should be played by black here. It's with h5. Bishop g4 is always bad. Looks like they're just awaiting h5, but once again, it accelerates our actions because we anyways intended to jump on e5. So when they capture, we recapture. We want to play h5, and when they play h5 themselves, now you don't have the knight on d7 to take on e5 when I play g4, so we're going to just break like Magnus against Salem, play g4, long castle, rook dg1, and white has a crushing kingside attack. I believe that it's very logical to go with h5. And let's take a look at the game. It's an email game, and you know how much I like email games. So knight e5. And the guy just wants to go with very, very primitive g4. And that's what he did. An email player immediately went for the g4 attack. After like c takes, captured by pawn, h takes, and he didn't go with knight takes g4 because it would definitely release some sort of tension, but he went with queen d2. So he doesn't care about the given pawn. What's so special about this one? He just managed to open the h file. He just wants to play the long castle to break with h5 afterwards along the h file, and he wants to go with the bishop h6. Beautifully played. This is a very nice attacking idea. So when the guy played bishop f5, played h5. Now you're saying, why? Why are you sacking another pawn? Because after knight h5, we go with bishop h6. And you say, why? What are you threatening? Well, buddy, I am threatening now. Rook h5, g takes h5, queen g5, threatening mate, and if you play bishop g6, knight g6 with some mating threats. Okay, e6. No more rook h5, queen g5. And then you say, okay, but now I can get the pawn back. Okay, the guy played f6, long castles, rook g1, and absolutely destroyed black player. The game didn't last too long. He played like bishop g7, took on g4, played queen h6, threatening some, I believe, queen g6, king g6, bishop e6 is mate. So the guy played knight e8, played queen e3, threatening the pawn on e6, played bishop h5, another lovely trick. So after f4, played this, didn't want to take on f4 and to simplify the game, because if you take on f4, after queen f6, you would have to exchange the queens because the bishop on h5 is hanging. Played king e7, grabbed the pawn back, played rook h7, took on e8, and this guy fell apart because when he took on h7, this guy didn't only win two pieces for the rook, but also threatened on d5 and a8, and after this, resigned. A very beautiful thing, a very beautiful game, a very lovely end of the game. And the top thing about bishop b7 is if you take by rook, he's gonna give you check. And when you go king b7, rook g7, when you go like this, knight b4, check, and you can't simply stop checkmate. So knight b4, king d7, because you can't go anywhere because of the queen on e5, and rook g7 just goes all the way to checkmate. So queen h5 or queen e6, I like queen h5, and when you go like this, it's checkmate. Very lovely game. After like b6, h4, we've seen how to attack against bishop g4. The plan doesn't change when they play h5 themselves. So what if c5 immediately? Let me just show you the game of Grandmaster Fassing from Germany. So this is what he did. He played against 2100 players. Bishop b7, played h5, took on g6, and played a very lovely thing. Take a look at this one. You don't know how to carry on with the attack. You realize that if you play something like bishop f3, you won't be able to reposition your queen to f3 and h3 because you need to take the advantage of the open h file. So what to do? A very lovely idea. Bishop e5. It attacks the knight with tempo and it gives you a very lovely queen f3, queen h3. A very strong idea. After rook c6, you give up the bishop and go queen f3. It's a very common thing when you attack, and I've seen Mark Habden use this in many of his games. After c takes, bishop d7, not allowing queen h3, that's one thing. Another thing, he just wants to second c3 and, I don't know, to create some sort of mess. After like a long castle, we would just have the attack, but this guy played very lovely g4. g4 gives you queen h3, stops the activity of bishop, prevents knight h5. So after like rook c4, long castles, queen c8, went with rook h4 because he's about to triple his pieces. Last attempt by black was rook c3, b takes knight e4, rook h1. If queen c3, bishop h6 would be just winning. Play g5, and after like rook h8, it was a lovely finishing touch here in the game because you can't take by bishop. Simply queen goes on h3, and you can't stop both mate on h8 or mate on h7. Beautiful game by Thessing, and you could have seen how to take advantage of the open file. And generally, we've seen almost all the moves. We've seen like knight h5, knight bd7, a6, bishop g4, b6. And now let's take a look at the c6 finally before we check the main line with c5. But before we carry on, I just need to ask you something. We've seen 6 different lines so far. Could you see that any of our ideas and plans, was different in comparison to, I don't know, b6 to a6 to knight bd7? No. And that's why I like the berry attack. Berry attack is a great, very simple opening with always universal type of plan. That's why I like berry attack, and that's why I like to connect it with 150 attack. That is going to be the subject of one of the next lessons. And that's why I'm always saying playing d4 doesn't mean that you're going to be a boring player. Playing d4 means that you even have more of a possibilities to transpose into different kinds of lines. Anyways, after c6, you go h4. If they go bishop g4, I don't have to explain you. On any h5, just g4. On any knight bd7, long castles. Any h5, you don't have time now for g4 because of knight e5, knight g4, but you go with f3 followed by g4. Now let me just show you a game of mine because I was analyzing something with one of my students, and I realized that here we just need to go with g4 at all costs. And simply I realized that when we go with g4 and when we go with the attack on the king's side, we just have to be pretty fast. And during the analysis, I learned one idea that I very much liked. And let me just show you. Knight e5, d takes c5. Now you would say, Maya, you lost your voice explaining to us how we shouldn't take by pawn, but always by bishop. And let me immediately make intermezzo and tell you, yes, you can take by bishop and play g4, which would be classic, and still you would be better. But here, I just learned d takes c5, knight d7, g4, and if they take, you give up this bishop. Looks crazy, I know. You take on h5 and go rook to d3. You want to play queen g2, rook g1. You want to take on g6, but this rook on d3 just saves everything. I would say save the day. And after h takes g4, a lovely thing happened in my blitz game. I played queen h2. What was so special about queen h2? I defended the pawn on e5, which is very important because it's a central pawn. I'm supporting the h5 idea, and I have battery on the h file. And I want to go with rook dg1 followed by rook g4 or h5 afterwards on the king's side. Very lovely thing, and I won in few moves. h5, just like always, knight e5. Just like always, we can't play g4 because, once again, I'm going to repeat, they take, and whether we take by pawn or bishop, they will take on g4. So, queen d2 in these cases, knight e5. Here you can play d takes e5 because of knight e7 or knight g4. So, bishop e5, and you go with f3, and you go with the things that I already showed you. So this line transposed into the system with knight bd7, I believe at some point that I showed you. You play long castle, and in case of a4, a3, queen a5, knight a2, and now you would say, Maya showed this to us. It looked okay. Knight b4, rerouting that knight to d3, playing rook dg1, but do we have anything else? Yes, you do have something else. You don't have to play the long castle. You can go very aggressively with g4. They take aggressively with h5. They take with tempo. And I just have to tell you that I played a couple of games like this in the past, and it worked perfectly fine. So you can just go with this. And that's another thing of playing the Berry attack, because you can mix so many things and they could be very useful in the practice and you're going to enjoy them so much. And finally, main line, main move, and the most important, I would say, line of the complete lecture with the Berry attack. Sixth move by black c5. Many call this move a refutation of this system. I wouldn't say it's any kind of refutation. It leads to normal positions. I still have something up my sleeve to show you here and to tell you, hey, you can enjoy it. I tried to play in a couple of my blitz practices d takes c5, but it didn't work. They all go with queen a5, going and trying to get a pawn back, and going with knight e4, pressuring my king on e1 and pinning the knight. So after like knight d2, that was my attempt. They took on c5, I played knight b3, and I tried to play it like this. It's nothing that special, but here I went with some g4, threatening g5, going after the pawn on d5, and I'm just giving you ideas. If you like, you can go with it. It's nothing that special, but it's worth of trying in a couple of blitz games. No, just go with the knight e5, because there is a great probability that most of your opponents still would go wrong, completely wrong, and play b6, knight bd7, a6, and play some very slow moves here. No, when you play knight e5, we just have to absolutely objectively say about this position that after you play knight e5, you want to go with a typical h4 and h5, and a golden rule of c5. And why is it so strong? Because it attacks the center, it gives them knight c6, which is way more promising with a pawn already being on c5 and attacking the d4 center, and it gives them queen a5 or queen b6. That's why after knight e5, they have to go with only one move. I remember one guy played b6 in this position. It doesn't change anything. We're just going with h4, and it's not gonna stop me to attack you. I remember Summer Scale in that book said, what if bishop a6? Hide the bishop, beautiful way to hide it on f3. Attack on d5, threaten d takes c5, and support the h5. Position is lost. I mean lost, much better for white. Then I've seen so many games with bishop b7. What are you hoping for if I pushed my pawn up to h5 with a rook on h1? I mean, buddy, don't get me wrong, but I'm gonna mate you sooner or later. Knight c6. We've already discussed these positions. You take, they take, and 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. What do we need? We need to reroute the queen via f3 to h3, and we're just playing bishop b5, attacking the knight on c6 with tempo in order to be able to play queen f3, queen h3. So just like you see, even when they play c5, it's not that bright for them unless they play knight c6. And when they play knight c6, it's a very important moment of this variation. We have to go with castle. There's nothing else. And they just have to take on d4. When they take on d4, we recapture by pawn. Finally, we came to probably most important position in the whole, I would say, lecture with this one. And just like I told you, only 20% of the guys, of those 35% of the guys who played the main line with c5, they're familiar with this one, which is a very, very low percentage that you're going to face the guys who know how to create Berry attack in the best fashion. And even if they do, it's not the end of the world. I'm going to show you a couple of tricks. Let's imagine they go queen b6. They attack both pawn on d4 and pawn on b2. You gotta take on c6. For example, if they take by queen, we go with a4. The point of playing a4 is that I just want to go with some bishop b5. I don't want to give them anything there, And if they play a6, avoiding bishop b5, by the way, let me just show you. Bishop b5, queen b6, a5, and afterwards by a6. They play a6, avoiding bishop b5, but then you play a5. And now you have a very lovely queenside action on the dark squares, and these pawns are fixed. If they ever play b6, will take, and a6 will remain weak. So after bishop f5, g4, knight a4, you want to play knight c5, rook e1, and g5. For example, I played a couple of my blitz games like this. No, I'm not saying it's an easy type of the game at all, but you're the one who's in the driver's seat, and white just has a very lovely type of the middle game, and it should be a cool game for white. Instead, if they play b takes c6, and lots of guys like to do it because it gives them c5, it gives them bishop a6. Well, if you know the right thing, they won't be able to do anything. So you just play knight a4, defending on b2, going after the queen, controlling c5. So when they play queen a5, attacking this knight, you play c3, solidifying your pawn chain. And it's not only about that. Look at the worst piece in the game. Imagine the b pawn wasn't hanging. You really have problems with this knight. This knight cannot go here, cannot go here, cannot go here. It's stupid on c3. And we're just trying to reroute this knight somehow. So what do we play? Knight a4, c3. And Hebden had one game like this. He captured, put a rook on the open file. And if you play e6, he would have jumped with the knight on c5, play b4, and he would have like full control of the game. No more knight e4. He absolutely fixed the weak pawn structure by black, and then you have an upper hand. On the king side with queen d2, bishop h6, h4, h5, maybe to double your rooks on the e file and to just play it like this. In the game was rook f to e8. Hebden played knight c5, played bishop e5, pointing out at the bishop on g7. So why is that important? Because in these positions, the main idea is to get rid of this with knight d7, and then they want to break with e5. And just because of that, bishop e5 was such a nice move. He exchanged. And now, simply, if the guy captured like this, he would have had like a very lovely type of the game after like knight d7, or you can just play knight to d3. It stops c5, because you can take and they have some weaknesses. It stops c5, and in the game was bishop g7, knight c5. Hebden kept the bishop, played queen f3, played rook e2, doubled his rooks, and played queen g3, followed by h4 and h5. Here, first he played this, and then did the h4. With this ideal placement of his pieces, he was absolutely ready to push on for a win, and eventually he won the game. Another thing is, for example, after knight a4, queen a5, c3, if they play knight d7, with one of the main ideas, let's break in the center with e5 and get a nice game. Of course, we should be going with b4, and now even e5 comes faster, better, because c3 could turn out to be weak. After queen d2, e5, you take and played rook a to d1. I've checked this correspondence game between those two guys, and I really have to say that I enjoyed white's play. Take a look at the game. The guy played rook f to e1, and after like bishop f8, bishop f1, bishop g4, played rook takes c5, exchanged like everything, and he had two pieces for the rook. Now you would say, but Maya, who would play bishop g4? Okay, let's discuss this position. You play bishop g7, and you defend knight on e5. You just managed to break on e5. Yes, we do have kind of weak pawn on c3 under the bishop on g7 or so on. You can play knight c4, but you also have problems with these hanging pawns. Also keep in mind, b4 stops c5, c3 stops d4. Even though we can talk about like c3, that d4 is impossible here. You play h3. By the way, don't worry. You can play bishop h3 followed by knight f3 because I'm going to include the intermezzo move. So bishop f5, and then you go knight c5. In a game like this, I believe that the full control is in white's hands. Just like I said, we got a charge of this game. everything's fine, and white seems to be much better here. And finally, if e takes d5, bishop f5. I assess this move as the main one. And I remember when I taught this variation, one of my most talented and one of my most successful students, Richard Wang, he's an IM, and he quit chess now. He's studying, and but at that time he was a world vice champion and the youngest IM in the world at the age of 11. I taught him to play like this. And do you know who played against him like this? Richard played against Wesley Saw, and Wesley Saw played bishop f5. Richard played rook e1, and after rook c8, Richie at that time, I can't remember exactly, did he play h3 or what did he do in this position? Maybe bishop f3. But I'm just going to show you how to reposition your pieces and what to do with your pieces in order to play this game really fine. Because this whole approach with c5, c takes d4, bishop f5, rook c8 turns out to be absolutely fine for black. Although, first move, you want to move your knight to c3 because it's a bad piece, but c2 is going to be hanging. So, rook to c1. Knight c6 is also interesting, followed by a4. And it's a very, very lovely continuation that you should be analyzing there. I played a couple of games, for example, a6. I play a5, fixing these pawns. And then I'm just playing h3, g4, fighting against the light square bishop. Then I'm repositioning my knight via a4, play c3, b4, knight c5, and I'm trying to get slightly better game. If they play queen a5, you play h3 to go with that. And I found a very lovely correspondence game where the guy played rook a2, which looks crazy, I know. Played a5, which also looks crazy, but now it's filled with very concrete threats. a6, queen d2, and now you want to know what is he threatening. He just wants to trap this queen with some rook b1, for example, like rook b1 followed by rook a4, or at some point even knight b5 going after the pawn on a7. This guy sacked an exchange, played f3 to avoid knight e4, played rook d1 to defend d4, played king h1, and somehow it looked like black had some sort of compensation, but pawn on a6 turned out to be so strong, and eventually he won the game. In the game was this, played bishop f1, queen c1, played queen d2. Now he decided to force the matters, threaten the bishop e1, played bishop e1. This guy hoped for the weak king on the dark squares, but it simply didn't work because after bishop d3, queen f4, queen b8, queen c7, simply it came to a moment where the black position started to fall apart and he immediately resigned. This was a correspondence game, which means that they had much more these ideas on their mind when they play these moves, but somehow I just showed you that knight c6 is a very interesting thing. Way easier for playing is rook c1. You could have seen that all the time c2 was, it turned out to be weak. So rook c1. And what's happening? For example, I know one game, the guy played a6. It stops knight c6 followed by bishop b5, gives them some b5, bishop f3. By the way, bishop f3 opens the e-file and at some point threatens g4 followed by g5 going after the pawn on d5. So they got to be very concrete with bishop f3. g4 is a threat. You want to play g4, g5 going after the d5 pawn. They got to play e6. Now you play queen d2. Watch out. When they play d6, they kind of lock the light square bishop here. So after this a3, play white h5 to stop g4. So after like bishop g5, knight c6. And the weakest piece in our game, actually we have two weak pieces. This one and this one. But bishop on f3 controls e4. Well, the knight is not doing anything. So the guy played this. Knight e2, very nice position. Now he fixed the pawn structure and created, like absolutely solid pawn structure. Played bishop f4 with tempo. Went with knight g3, attacking both. At some point, pawn on h5 and the bishop on f5. Captured. Played knight f1, going with this knight to e3 to go after the g4 pawn. Queen f6 stops knight to e3. But now he went with rook a1, to break these pawns with some a4. After queen f5, knight g3, queen f6, rook f1, now he wants to go with f3. The guy played a5, knight e2. It's full of, I know it's full of maneuvering, but you just have to know one thing, that this is absolutely the best line for black against the berry attack. So the guy played f3, opened up the f file, took ones, played queen to e3. He absolutely had he had solidified, like the defense of the c3 pawn. Went for the knight g5, queen. Okay, this guy's now blundered, but after like rook f1, slowly you can crack his defense down by pushing these pawns onto the king side, or simply taking advantage on the open f file. Guys, I think that I gave you a very interesting line where you can have an amazing success with the white pieces, especially against the King's Indian players. King's Indian players hate knight c3 move. Why? Because they're King's Indian players, because they like the flexibility with d6 pawn. And golden rule, whenever white plays knight c3 in these positions, you just have to react with d5. And then the King's Indian player has to play with a hole on e5, and they're not used on that. Once again, I would like to remind you that this lecture was dedicated for Carl Pottinger, aka Don Carlito. But I hope you're going to enjoy this file, you're going to enjoy this lecture, and you'll always be able to get back to this video and improve your berry attack. Have a good one, guys, and see you next time.